On 3AW 693, Mike till midnight. 3AW Traffic. For Mercedes-Benz Berwick, outstanding buying opportunities just 24 minutes from the Burnley Tunnel.
Well, here I am sitting in Mike Brady's studio, and all lanes are moving well into the studio, and out of the studio, some very quick exits by Kevin Trask and Chris Ryan. They're moving northbound on Collins Street back to home. I can't get away from the traffic, Mike.
Very nice, Caroline.
So lovely to be back in the studio again. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you, and it's been a while since we've actually caught up.
Yes.
We speak on the phone all the time.
We do.
Let's welcome your special guest here tonight with you,
Yes.
Enzo Condello. Hello, Enzo.
Oh, hello, Mike. Can't wait.
Lovely to meet you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming in. I will explain, but I just want to ask Caroline a couple of little things to get us on track. You well?
Are you going to ask me about the Metro Tunnel Works or something?
No.
Oh, yes, I'm really
I don't
well.
want to talk about traffic.
Thank goodness for that.
This is Saturday
I do it all
night.
day long. I know it's
Who
Saturday
cares?
night. Oh,
No,
people are stuck
actually,
on the roads, Kev.
I've had my breakdown, and I've done my rants on
You
radio.
see, Enzo, when I'd come in to do with my topic and subject and quiz on Saturday nights, which I used to do with Mike for a very long time, Mike would unload on me and ask me questions about the jolly traffic.
And not so jolly at the moment. I
No,
have
well,
to
there's
say.
a lot of works underway, but it's all for the greater good in the end.
Now, the reason we're here,
Yes.
and it's not the only reason, but Caroline is about to appear in a play, which she's been wanting to do for quite a while, and it's called Geli. How do I say it right? Geli?
You've done very well. Yeah, Geli.
Yeah, Hitler's niece, and it's written by Enzo Condello, and it's not often, and directed, I might add, by Wolf Heidecker, but it's not often we actually get to talk to the playwright and
it's
to ask
a
the
coup.
questions as to where it comes. Now, the title itself is elicits interest because you say, well, it's, Geli, Hitler's niece, so immediately I was like, what's it about then? I know a little bit about the relationship between Hitler and his niece, but can you give us a little bit of a synopsis as how you would describe the play? And I've got some other questions for you both after that.
Yeah, well, basically, it's to do with his niece, who he met in 1928. It's actually his half niece. She came to his house with her mother Angela to live with Hitler. And she was about 18 or 19 at the time in 1928. And slowly Hitler became obsessed with her romantically. It's just amazing. And he got involved with her, and he actually wanted to marry her, according to the biographies. And apparently she was the only woman that he ever loved, who totally. And he wanted to marry her, but then things went tragically wrong because people in the upper echelon of the Nazi Party got wind of it, and they tried in a sinister way to sabotage her.
A lot of people say that she tried to influence him in a different direction. She was artistic, and he showed signs of being artistic, but she had a more sensitive approach and tried to steer him away from the direction that he was obviously taking the world at that point in time. Do you think that the relationship, if it had have continued, she may have had enough influence and he may have loved her enough to have actually moderated some of his more radical and terrible behaviours?
Yes, I believe that was the case, and it was starting to happen, and there was evidence that it was happening, and that's why the certain Nazis didn't want that to happen, because she was very religious. She was an extremely religious person, and she was Catholic, and she started to instill the ideas into him about Catholicism, because remember, Hitler was a Catholic. When he was little, he was actually a choir boy, would you believe?
Gosh.
And then he also wanted to be a priest, when he was little, because his mother was a devout Catholic. So she was bringing out of him these Catholic sort of subconscious ideas which had been instilled in him as a youth. So I believe that, and according to certain biographies, that he was beginning to change, and he would have moderated from his extreme ways back to moderation.
It's really fascinating. The documentary stuff that I've seen is it's quite unnerving in some respects, because there are a few mysteries which I'm sure you've used as part of the drama within the writing. Caroline, you're playing a role,
I'm
good
playing
role.
Angela, who is Hitler's older half-niece, the mother of Geli. Because Geli is the diminutive of Angela. So Geli is actually Angela too, but little Angela. So that's Geli and her mum.
Have you developed an accent?
No, we're doing it in our own accents and Australian accents. There's no Wolf is German, obviously. Just by coincidence, we happen to have a German director, and he said, "Please, no accents, no Austrian or German accents." Thank you.
I did a thing at the Sydney Opera House once. I got away with it in Melbourne, where I had to introduce lots of Mozart and German arias. And in Melbourne, they didn't know the difference, but the audience in Sydney at the Opera House were all German. And after every pronunciation, there were sniggers coming, and they burst into outright laughter a little bit later. But so I agree with that. I do.
No, we're not doing that.
Is it because it's quite a confronting story? Is it confronting to play a role in? This is obviously a pure drama, and it's a great topic.
There are. Do you agree with me, Enzo, in saying there are some tiny bits of slight black humour?
Oh, yeah, there is a bit of black humour, a bit of sarcasm.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of sexy stuff in there too, Mike.
Oh, a little bit of the erotic.
Yeah, there's a bit of erotic stuff going on. Yes.
Well, I bought my seats now, then. You really put a big emphasis on that.
It's a very interesting play, and I'm so delighted to be a part of it and very flattered to be cast as Angela. The females in the cast, it's 3 males, 3 females. The 3 women roles are easy to play by being an actor, because we are innocent parties and we're victims, really, aren't we?
Yes, the women
they're all good people.
Good, lovely people who were misled or became
and manipulated.
Manipulated. It's the men who are evil in the play.
Particularly Himmler, who was extremely manipulative. So it's different for Matthew Richard Walsh, who plays Hitler. He has to... it's playing Hitler, he has to find moments of vulnerability, and it's very interesting because Hitler, despite being the most evil person that ever lived and depraved and cruel, the frightening thing about Hitler was he actually really loved animals, and he adored his German shepherd called Blondie, who went everywhere with him. So there's this terrible duplicity. It's hard to reconcile that he was such an evil person, And but Himmler and Goebbels were evil people, and just rotten at the core, weren't they?
Oh yes, especially Himmler.
He was bad
extremely the core of perdition. He belongs to. He was a very evil man. Hitler. Both of them.
There's some interesting timing here, because in a world where we've just been through, we've seen women pushing back. What's that organisation called now?
The Me Too movement.
Me Too, and the Harvey Weinstein and various others in the world. It was a man's world totally under Hitler, wasn't it? Women within the Nazi movement played a very subservient role, whether they were in fact duplicitous or complicit in the terrible things that went on. They still played a insignificant role in that gang, for want of a better term.
They were a gang, and Angela and Geli and Ava, to a certain extent, were stuck in terrible situations because Angela, the reason she came to live with Hitler and Geli is because her husband died and she had nowhere to go, and she had 3 children. And she had nowhere to live. She had no means of feeding her children, so she had no choice but to live with Hitler and have to eat craw, the expression was. And so she was stuck in this position, and she's also watching this Hitler having an affair with her half-niece, which is, at the beginning she was quite happy about, because it was ensuring, it was working well for her, but then, if you see the play, you'll see that it all gets a bit
I'm dying to see it.
Yes.
I like plays that have a bit of depth, and I know we've spoken.
They had some power in women in Germany, but there's one scene in the play where Angela, Geli's mother, physically attacks Hitler.
Yeah, I get to smack Hitler.
In a domestic, she attacks Hitler and belts him furiously. So that's a good thing.
Well,
Everyone will be cheering.
That's the hissing and cheering and booing. We've got a call. Slade's been hanging on. He wants to ask a question, I think. Hi, Slade.
Hi, Slade.
Hi, mate. How are you? I just thought anyone heading to Melbourne Airport up Mount Alexandra Road, ready to turn left onto the Tullamarine Freeway, where the freeway splits or the service on-ramp splits between Tullamarine Freeway and Calder Freeway. There's been a serious accident there. Emergency services are on call.
Oh,
Thank
you,
you.
Slade. Well, I know that from Mount Road onto the.
Yes.
It's a big.
There's new linings. There's new lines have been put in there too, and some people get a little bit confused.
There's a bit of confusion with road lines around Melbourne. Thank you, Slade.
Thank you,
really
Slade.
appreciate it. People heading to the airport, if you're heading up Mount Road, the on-ramp onto the freeway is blocked with a serious accident. So be very careful as you head up that way. I have to say, Enzo, has got some information, and it's a sensitive thing, but your beloved brother who was murdered, Mario Condello, was also interested in this and encouraged you. It's been in the pipeline a long time, hasn't it, this project?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit, where did the interest come from? Where did you, where did you pick it up and run with the
this links it to Mario because, it wasn't meant, it wasn't for any sensationalistic purpose that I wrote the play. This is my sixth play, and Mario drew my attention to it because he bought this book, which I've got here, it's called Hitler and Geli. It's a biography by Ronald Hayman. And he actually bought it for me, and so he said, "Look at this book because there's a great play in this book, you know." So I looked at it because I thought, because I was looking for another topic, and so that's how he. See, Mario also saw. We used to talk about these things, and he also saw. Before I mentioned that, there's actually 2 novels written about Hitler and Geli, and 2 movies have been made of it. And Norman Mailer, the great American writer, was about to write the definitive novel about it, but he died in 1987, so he didn't get to do it. But anyway, Mario, we used to talk, he saw Hitler and the Nazis as political gangsters who made the Mafia and the Cosa Nostra look like members of the Vienna Boys Choir. He was fascinated because he was fascinated why this titan of evil that Hitler was could be capable of such monstrous evil and at the same time show some sort of romantic passion or infatuation in the one person.
And art. Yeah.
And art, because Hitler, he went to the Vienna Academy of Arts and he in 1909, I think it was, and he was rejected at the Vienna Academy of Arts because he wanted to become an artist. And as John F. Kennedy said, had they let him into the Vienna Academy of Arts, we would not have heard from Hitler again because he would probably just become an artist and that's the end of him. But anyway, that was.
But the Nazi Party the Nazi Party sort of picked him as a bit of a poster boy, didn't they? They saw in him a great vehicle because of his theatrics. And when Geli got in the way, they wanted her gone.
Yes.
They wanted her out of the way. She was ruining their plans for Hitler.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? And I think a bit of what you're talking about, Enzo, is certainly a large part of why people are still fascinated with that question. Where could that evil,
That's come from?
Terrible, terrible evil, where does it exist? Does it exist in all? My favourite war film, for a certain reason, is The Thin Red Line. I love the almost like prose that's read over the opening, asking that question: where does this evil belong? Where does it come from? Being a writer, you've probably had to explore that internally and through your own family, very close family.
Yeah.
With the murder of your brother, you must have had to explore that deeply to be able to come up with the creative. And I do not know the true and full script. I haven't seen any and won't, of course, until I go and see it. And certainly don't want to until I go and see it. Yeah. But you must have confronted that question yourself many times.
Yes, it's a real. The Catholics call it the mystery of evil, where it comes from. It's very hard to say where these demonic things happen, whether there is an underworld of demons which could sort of possess, or whether it's just within human nature. It's a very difficult thing. Carl Jung, the great psychologist, talked about man's double, that we have a dark side as well as a light side. So we have two conflicting sides. And some people, for some reason or another, give in to their dark side, some to some extent, or some completely, as Hitler and Himmler and people like that did. They gave into their dark side completely. But the fascination with Geli is because she was a counter. She was like an angelic being who was countering the dark side of evil. And I think she would have slowly succeeded because he was beginning to change. Because her Catholicism was impinging on him, but unfortunately the inner circle of the Nazis, in a sinister, evil, mischievous way, they undermined and sabotaged her.
Yeah, that is really what I was asking that question. Is it there? And I've always thought that, I think it is there because it's happened too many times. But I'm really fascinated by the story. Excuse me again, we have another update on this very bad accident. David's calling, and you've got an update, David, on what's going on out there near Mount Road. What's happening, David?
Okay, we're up at Hidden Valley. We're looking down on Wallen, and at the Hume Highway, the fire has really got away because of the wind. The CFA, we can just see coloured lights everywhere. It's a substantial fire, and you can see the CFA by the amount of flashing lights are throwing everything they got out of it because of the wind.
Oh, thanks, Ed. I thought you were actually giving us an update on the accident. So there is a fire near Wallen then. So
right next to the Hume Highway.
Right next to the Hume Highway. Well, that's like deja vu, isn't it? Going back a few years. Well, I hope, or keep us up to date if you see any development there, and we'll check with the newsroom and find out what's going on. Thank you, David, for letting us know. So if you're in the area, keep an eye, watch out, and listen to your radio. And we'll give you an update if we're able to get that for you now. We'll take a short break, and we'll be back with our friend Caroline Ferguson and Enzo Condello talking about this extraordinary play that's about to open on April the 26th to the 5th of May, and it's you can buy bookings, or you can book now through trybooking.com. The prices are pretty reasonable, I reckon, between $22 and $29. And I will definitely be there. It's called Geli, Hitler's niece. We'll be back in a moment.
On 3AW 693, Mike till midnight.
Welcome back to Mike till midnight. It's 27 after 9 o'clock. Want to win 25 grand cash? All you have to do is head to 3aw.com.au and join 3AW's footy tipping competition. Thanks to Craig Howard, g'day Craig, and the team at Mercedes-Benz Berwick. So there it is, $25,000 cash. And all you have to do is head to 3aw.com.au, 3AW's footy tipping competition. My special guest, sounds funny saying you're a special guest.
I know, because I'm,
Yeah, well, part of the wallpaper.
Part of the wallpaper here. I've been doing the traffic for nearly 15 years, Mike.
Well, there you go. Caroline Ferguson and, of course, Enzo Condello. And we're talking about Enzo's play, which Caroline is playing a nice role in. She's playing...
Yes, I'm playing a multi-layered, interesting role, Mike.
Well, they're always multi-layered when you play them. I've sat there with my eyes wide open in the past.
You've been very good coming to my play.
Geli, Hitler's niece, and it will be performed at the Richmond Theatre above the Richmond Library on the corner of Swan and Church Streets from April 26, which is the opening, to the 5th of May, 8 o'clock. And matinees at 2 o'clock. Tickets through trybooking.com, and they're very reasonable, between $22 and $29. So it's not going to send you broke, and it's a lot of work that goes into putting something together, as substantial. You mentioned, Enzo, that your brother Mario saw the Nazis as a gang, and I've never really looked at it that way, but that is quite true. They were a organised, fully armed, completely shameless. They didn't even pretend any respectability in terms of, as they got deeper into the war with the mass murder and all that sort of stuff. Do you feel that this will be cathartic for you, or has it been cathartic to get this off? Because Mario was obviously involved in the gangland wars, in so-called, I say so-called because when I was a kid, there was a gangland war that raged, and no one called it a gangland war, in Port Melbourne. Just Port Melbourne and Richmond alone, to do with the wharves and what was going on.
The painters and
That's what, and there was lots of murders and all, but it wasn't called a gangland war. They were just murders, and unfortunately there is that dark side which we spoke of.
Yeah.
But do you think this is cathartic in some way for you to write this?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that while I was writing it, this was after Mario's murder, that there was a lot of grief there within me and sense of doom and tragedy, which I think translated and transposed into the play. And, you know, that was probably the right time to write it too. So, yeah, but, well, the thing is that the Nazis were a gang, but they were a political gang. They were political gangsters, So there's a difference. In a sense, like the mafia or people in non-political type organised crime, they're more in it for the money, you know, like because if it wasn't for the money, there's no point doing it, you know. They think, why go to jail if there's no money in it, you know. Whereas with the political gangsters, they want power.
It's about power,
it's power, and then also as a consequence of that, they can get money, you know. People like political gangsters in the 20th century, like Hitler, Mussolini, and Stalin, and others, you know, they made that choice to do that, you know. So yeah, but. See, Mario was, he took one direction in life, which was by choice. That was, everyone's responsible for their own choices. I took a totally different direction in my life. It was my choice. So, yeah, but I'd be too lazy to be a gangster anyway.
Too stressful.
Well, I grew up in a pretty rough environment, and I often say that, crime was pretty rife and in those days, and I often say that the guitar was my magic carpet. It took me out of the poverty culture. It took me on a creative path, and a lot of people,
a bit like Johnny Cash.
Well, in some respects, but
his guitar took him out of that.
Well, that's true, but he played on his, being in jail and all that stuff. I think he was in overnight.
Yeah,
I think. But I got locked up a couple of times, but that was really when basically self-defence, travelling touring in countries. The countryside. I got locked up in Broken Hill and all that stuff for taking a bloke out. Who'd picked on me and a couple of other people and all that sort of stuff. But it's the choices that people make in life, and I know I don't want to get involved in this, but quite often I'm externally influenced, and I think it was music. I developed a love with music. The enigma about Hitler was that he obviously loved music, and he was very fond and keen of art. In some areas, he didn't show the darkness. I'm going back. I'm chopping over what we spoke about before, but that's really what I find fascinating. That this dark, dreadful person that emerged had quite a cultured depth to him. I know he was from poor parents and all that stuff, but he had a cultured, which makes it to me even more depraved. What the Nazis did, I think. Yeah,
well, that's right, because they also enlisted culture, like Richard Wagner, for example, the music of Richard Wagner, which had a powerful influence on Hitler and German Nazis at the time as well, and also a lot of intellectuals too at the time. They enlisted intellectual sort of ideologies from a lot of intellectuals. So there is that sort of the dichotomy between the culture and criminality in a way. So it's amazing how these things happen. There's just a mystery. As the Catholics say, it's a mystery.
Yeah, well, that's well put too. Yes.
Yeah, but. Yeah, so anyway,
where does it spring from?
Yeah, what we don't know from what. Yeah, you're right. But this thing about the gang and that, that's what they're sort of political gangs, and there's quite a few political gangsters in the world today.
Well, there certainly are. There's no doubt about that. It hasn't gone away, has it?
No, it's still relevant.
Darkness is still
there. You can see it all the time in the world. What's happening? So
I think the world is made up of 99% really, really good people, and 1%, from which of that 1%, there is 1% of that 1% that become the despots of the world.
Yeah, well, this is
and there
true.
are plenty of them around now, possibly even more than there was
Back then.
Caroline, you're excited about it?
I'm very proud to be in this play. The writing is beautiful. The writing is written in prose, so it's written like a Shakespearean play. So it's very interesting language.
Yeah.
And there are some beautiful lines that are really will echo with everybody, I think.
It's like Shakespearean
Yeah.
drama of the tragedy of Geli. It's like a Greek tragedy.
It's like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah, and in a sense, there's a parallel there because Mario his tragedy was a little bit Shakespearean too, a little bit, because he fell from a place where he could have, been more.
Because he was a lawyer, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a lawyer.
Oh, he was a prominent lawyer.
Yeah.
And so he could have opened himself to that darker side, you see. And what happened was that it brings in other forces in play when that happens, and that totally can draw you in, So you
could say that he stepped a middle line, a central line, that he didn't go totally to the total gangster side, because he kept his, he tried the legal way, and his profession, stuck to his profession, but sadly it had a tragic end.
Yeah, well, this is it, because that's what happens, to some people. It's hard to explain, but we try to sort of fathom these things, because you can't sweep evil under the carpet and pretend it's not there. You've got to explore it and face it and try and overcome it.
That's right. Yeah. Look, good luck.
Thank you, Mike.
We've got to go to a break. And
yes.
Caroline, it's wonderful to see you in
Nice
here.
to see you.
3AW.
Yes. Thanks for having us.
I think this is the most intelligent interview. I've tried to sound really intelligent while I question.
You've done a good job, Mike.
I've never interviewed a playwright before. So
you're very intelligent, mate.
I had to say I was actually nervous about it. So thank you for putting me at ease.
Enzo was nervous too. We should put all this information on your Facebook page, Mike.
We certainly will, and
Yes.
I'll get Kenny to grab some information from you.
But it's a great play for people to come after the footy. Because it's in Richmond near the Richmond.
Jump on the
footy ground.
tram.
Jump on the tram. It's a great. You'll have a great night out.
It's a great theatre. It's the Richmond Theatre, and it's above the beautiful Richmond Library on the corner of Swan and Church Streets. From April 25th to the 5th of May, evenings 8 o'clock, matinees at 2 o'clock. Tickets through trybooking.com, and they're very reasonable. And you'll see Caroline doing what she does.
Trying to do a good job.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Enzo. And,
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very
Good
much.
luck with it, and I will be there.
Thank you,
See you
Mike.
soon.
Thank you.
On 3AW.